Grandpa had been clean-shaven at the funeral, but now he wore a stubbly white beard. He was dressed in faded jeans, work boots, and a flannel shirt. Kendra studied the older woman. She was not Grandma Sorrison. Despite her white hair streaked with few black strands, her face had an ageless quality. Her almond eyes were black as coffee, and her features suggested a hint of Asian ancestry. Short and slightly stooped, she retained an exotic beauty. Dad and the lanky man opened the back of the SUV and began removing suitcases and duffel bags. "You coming, Kendra?" Dad asked. Kendra opened the door and dropped to the gravel. "Just place the things inside," Grandpa was telling Dad. "Dale will take them up to the bedroom." "Where's Mom?" Dad asked. "Visiting your Aunt Edna." "In Missouri?" "Edna's dying." Kendra had barely ever heard of Aunt Edna, so the news did not mean much. She looked up at the house. She noticed that the windows had bubbly glass. Bird nests clung under the eaves. They all migrated to the front door. Dad and Dale carried the larger bags. Seth held a smaller duffel bag and a cereal box. The cereal box was his emergency kit. It was full of odds and ends he thought would come in handy for an adventure. Rubber bands, a compass, granola bars, coins, a squirt gun, a magnifying glass, plastic handcuffs, string, and a whistle. "This is Lena, our housekeeper," Grandpa said. The older woman nodded and gave a little wave. "Dale helps me tend the grounds." "Aren't you pretty?" Lena said to Kendra. "You must be around 14." Lena had a faint accent that Kendra could not place. In October, an iron knocker hung on the front door. A squinting goblin with a ring in his mouth. The thick door had bulky hinges. Kendra entered the house. Glossy wood floored the entry hall. A wilting arrangement of flowers rested on a low table in a white ceramic vase. A tall, brass coat rack stood off to one side beside a black bench with a high carved back. On the wall hung a painting of a fox hunt. Kendra could see in another room where a huge embroidered throw rug covered most of the wooden floor. Like the house itself, the furnishings were antiquated, but in good repair. The couches and chairs were mostly of the sort you would expect to see while visiting a historical site. Dale was heading up the stairs with some of the bags. Lena excused herself and went to another room. "Your home is beautiful," Mom gushed. "I wish we had time for a tour." "Maybe when you get back," Grandpa said. "Thanks for letting the kids stay with you," Dad said. "Our pleasure. Don't let me keep you." "We're on a pretty tight schedule," Dad apologized. "You kids be good and do whatever Grandpa Sorrison tells you," Mom says. She hugged Kendra and Seth. Kendra felt tears seeping into her eyes. She fought them back. "Have a fun cruise." "We'll be back before you know it," Dad said, putting an arm around Kendra and tousling Seth's hair. Waving, Mom and Dad walked out the door. Kendra went to the driveway and watched them climb into the SUV. Dad honked as they drove off. Kendra fought back tears again as the SUV vanished into the trees. Mom and Dad were probably laughing, relieved to be off by themselves for the longest vacation of their married lives. She could practically hear their crystal goblets clinking, and here she stood, abandoned. Kendra closed the door. Seth, obviously oblivious as ever, was examining the intricate pieces of decorative chess set. Grandpa stood in the entry hall, watching Seth and looking politely uncomfortable. "Leave the chess pieces alone," Kendra said. "They look expensive." "Oh, he's all right," Grandpa said. "By the way," he said Kendra could tell he was relieved to see Seth setting the pieces down. "Shall I show you to your room?" They followed Grandpa up the stairs and down a carpeted hall to the foot of a narrow wooden staircase leading up to a white door. Grandpa continued on up the creaking steps. "We don't often have guests, especially children." Grandpa said over his shoulder, "I think you'll be most comfortable in the attic." He opened the door, and they entered after him. Braced for cobwebs and torture devices, Kendra was relieved to find the attic was a cheerful playroom. Spacious, clean, and bright. The long room had a pair of beds, shelves crowded with children's books, freestanding wardrobes, tiny dressers, a unicorn rocking horse, multiple toy chests, and a hen in a cage. Seth went straight for the chicken. "Cool!" He poked a finger through the slender bars, trying to touch the orange gold feathers. "Careful, Seth," Kendra warned. "He'll be fine," Grandpa said. "Goldilocks is more a house pet than a barnyard hen. Your grandmother usually takes care of her. I figured you kids wouldn't mind filling in while she's gone." "You'll need to feed her," clean her cage, and collect her eggs. She lays eggs? Seth looked astonished and delighted. An egg or two a day, if you keep her well fed, Grandpa said. He pointed to a white plastic bucket full of kernels near the cage. A scoop in the morning and another in the evening should take care of her. You'll want to change the lining of her cage every couple of days and make sure she has plenty of water. Every morning we give her a tiny bowl of milk, Grandpa winked. That's the secret behind her egg production. Can we ever take her out? Then head and move close enough for Seth to stroke her feathers with one finger. Just put her back afterwards. Grandpa bent down to put a finger into the cage, and Goldilocks instantly pecked at it. Grandpa withdrew his hand. Never liked me much. Some of these toys look expensive, Kendra said, standing beside an ornate Victorian dollhouse. Toys are meant to be played with, Grandpa said. Do your best to keep them in decent shape, and that will be good enough. Seth moved from the hen cage to a small piano in the corner of the room. He banged on the keys, and the notes that clanged sounded different from what Kendra would have expected. It was a little harpsichord. Consider this room your space, Grandpa said. Within reason, I will not bother you to pick up things in here, so as long as you treat the rest of the house with respect. Okay, Kendra said. I also have some unfortunate news. We're in the height of a tick season. You kids ever hear of Lyme disease? Seth shook his head. I think so, Kendra said. It was originally discovered in a town of Lyme, Connecticut, not too far from here. You catch it from tick bites. The woods are full of ticks this year. What does it do? Seth asked. Grandpa paused for a solemn moment. Starts out as a rash. Before long, it can lead to arthritis, paralysis, and heart failure. Besides, disease or no, you don't want ticks burrowing into your skin to drink your blood. You try to pull them off, and the heads detach. Hard to get out. That's disgusting, Kendra exclaimed. Grandpa nodded grimly. They're so small you can hardly see them, at least until they fill up with blood. Then they'll swell into the size of a grape. Anyhow, point is, you kids are not allowed to enter the woods under any circumstances. Stay on the lawn. Break that rule, and your outdoor privileges will be revoked. We understand one another? Kendra and Seth nodded. You also need to keep out of the barn. Too many ladders and rusty old pieces of farm equipment. Same rule apply to the barn as apply to the woods. Set foot in there, and you will spend the rest of your stay in this room. Okay, Seth said, crossing the room to where a little easel stood on a paint-spattered tarp. A black canvas rested on the easel. Additional black canvases leaned against the wall nearby, besides the shelf stocked with jars of paint. Can I paint? I'm telling you twice. You have the run of this room, Grandpa said. Just try not to destroy it. I have many chores to attend to, so I may not be around much. There should be plenty of toys and hobbies here to keep you busy. What about a TV? Seth asked. No TV or radio, Grandpa replied. Rules of the house. If you need anything, Lena will never be far. He indicated a purple cord hanging against the wall near one of the beds. Tug the cord hanging against the wall near one of the beds. Tug the cord if you need her. In fact, Lena will be up with your supper in a few minutes. Won't we eat together? Kendra asked. Some days. Right now I need to visit the East Hayfield. May not be back until late. How much land do you own? Seth asked. Grandpa smiled. More than my share. Let's leave it at that. I'll see you kids in the morning. He turned to leave and then paused, reaching into the coat pocket. Turning back, he handed Kendra a tiny key ring, holding 3 miniature keys of varying sizes. Each of these keys fits something in this room. See if you can figure out what each unlocks. Grandpa Sorson walked out of the room, closing the door behind him. Kendra listened as he descended the stairs. She stood at the door, waiting, and then gently tried the handle. It turned slowly. She eased the door open, peered down the empty stairway, and then closed it. At least he had not locked them in. Seth had opened the toy chest and was examining the contents. The toys were old-fashioned, but in excellent condition. Soldiers, dolls, puzzles, stuffed animals, wooden blocks. Kendra wandered over to the telescope by a window. She peered into the eyepiece, positioned the telescope to look through a window pane, and began twisting the focus of the knobs. She could improve the focus, but couldn't get it quite right. She stopped fiddling with the knobs and examined the window. The panes were made of bubbly glass, like those in the front of the house. The images were being distorted before they reached the telescope.